Happy Father's Day to all the dads. Let's give it up again for all the dads. We are so grateful for you. Thank you guys for joining us today here at Thrive. My name is Judah, pastor here, and we welcome you to all of our campuses on TV, online, our senior centers, our podcast. We are just so grateful to have you here. And if God has put it on your heart to partner with Thrive financially, we encourage that. You could do so out in our lobby at one of our offering boxes, or you can go online at thrive.church/give to get involved and use your gift of generosity there. Being Father's Day and all, this is kind of like my guilty pleasure, okay, every year, and it's to give you some curated dad jokes. So here we go. I wanted to start a zoo, but I didn't have a black bear and a grizzly bear. Apparently, that's the bare minimum. Did you know that 10 plus 10 and 11 plus 11 is exactly the same thing? 10 plus 10 is 20, and 11 plus 11 is 22. Yeah, some of you get that later. It's okay. It's okay. What is blue and not heavy? Light blue. A cop got upset at me the other day and said that my dog was chasing a kid on a bike. I said, there's no way. My dog doesn't even own a bike. Last year, I survived the fall without a parachute. I also survived winter, spring, and summer. If poison expires, does that make it more poisonous or less poisonous? Not really sure. I dropped my watch in the toilet once. I had a really crappy time. Where do pirates get their hooks? At secondhand stores, of course. Most people have heard about Karl Marx, but few have heard of his lesser-known sister, Anya, the runner. Her name is still mentioned at the beginning of every race. Anya Marx. Anyhow, I tried to start up a professional hide-and-seek team not long ago. Eventually, I gave up because, good players are really hard to find. What celebrity is always ready to have some cereal? Reese Witherspoon. I didn't say they're good. I bought some camouflage pants the other day. I ended up taking them back, though. I just couldn't see myself wearing them. And to whoever stole my Microsoft Office, I will find you. You have my word. In 2022, I didn't do a marathon. I also didn't run a marathon in 2023. I didn't run a marathon in 2024. I didn't run a marathon in 2025. If you haven't caught on, this is a running joke. What days are the strongest? Obviously, Saturday and Sunday. The rest are just weekdays. Anyhow, that's all I got for you. Today is Father's Day, and whenever churches talk about dads, sometimes men often hear things like "try harder," "step up," "do more." Well, that's not what this message is about today. We're starting a new series called Shipshape. And throughout this series, we're going to be talking about the different ships that shape our life, that determine the direction of our life. Ships like leadership and stewardship and discipleship. Because each of us in our life, we're sailing somewhere. Nobody just drifts into a great marriage. Nobody just drifts into having strong faith. Nobody drifts into a healthy family. Nobody drifts into a life full of purpose. And if we're not careful, if we take our hands off the controls, it's easy for us to drift. Now, since we're kind of doing a nautical theme, I felt it would be appropriate this week to suffer for you guys a little bit and take out my boat. Well, here we are. We're going to see if the boat cranks. Has been sitting all winter. Just just uncovered it, just put all the plugs in, and we're gonna see. It's always a little hit or miss, so hopefully we have a hit today. Not quite. Yeah, we got it, buddy. Okay, well, let's take it on the water and see if it works. Maybe. Gas price. We're gonna need to lay hands on the gas prices. Let's do this. One thing I've learned about boating over the years is that boats tend to drift. If I take my hands off the wheel and we're going full power, the boat is going to have a mind of its own because of the currents, the wind, things like that. It's going to start to drift. It's probably going to run aground. In much the same way, our lives can run aground as well if we don't have leadership, the ability to lead ourselves, to put our hands on the wheel and take ownership for the direction. When you're boating, you're constantly looking on the water to see if there's logs and rocks, obstructions, other boats, so that you can dodge them, avoid them, and you can go in a safe direction. In life, we have to be doing that as well. Before we can lead others, we have to be able to lead ourselves, to look ahead, to find the best path to avoid the obstacles and obstructions. Because if you don't choose your path, well, oftentimes we're going to drift into somewhere that we don't want to end up. Yeah, I was grateful that it cranked up, so I wasn't entirely sure. But, here's the thing. How do we get to where we are today? How did you get where you are today? Not physically, not like here at this location, but spiritually. How did you get where you are today? How did you get where you are today financially? How did you get where you are today relationally? How did you get where you are today as a husband? How did you get where you are today as a wife? How did you get where you are as a parent or as a student, as a sibling, as a neighbor? Most people would just say, well, it just kind of happened. But if we're honest, rarely do things just happen. In your notes, if you're taking them, our direction determines our destination. Our direction determines our destination, where it is that we're going and how we're getting there. So we're talking about leadership. And leadership, it's easy for us just to think that means we're talking about just being in charge of something, right? We're not just talking about being in charge. See, leadership is more about taking responsibility. A single mom can be a leader. A teenager can lead. A grandparent can lead. A business owner can lead. A volunteer can lead. See, leadership is influence, and everyone has some influence. Undeniably, Jesus was the most influential person to ever walk the face of this earth. Even non-believers admit that there's no one that compares to his level of influence on this world. Even our calendars have been shifted to mark his life. So us as people, as humans, we our leaders. Maybe you are influencing your children. Maybe you're influencing your spouse. Maybe you're influencing your friends or influencing your coworkers. Maybe you're influencing people online. People who you don't even realize are watching you, you're influencing. See, the question isn't whether or not you have influence. The question today is, what are you doing with that influence? See, influence is something that God entrusts to us. And this is not something just for our gain, but he entrusts influence to us so that we can make a difference in this world. It says in Luke chapter 12, verse 48, Jesus is speaking here and says, when someone has been given much, much will be required in return. And when someone has been entrusted with much, then even more will be required. See, God has entrusted influence in our life. And as a result, something is required in return. Now, many times people hear this verse and just think that it's talking about money. But see, influence is something that we have been given also, which means that leadership is actually stewardship. See, leadership is not just a position to enjoy. Sometimes we think that leadership is something that we get when we are promoted at our job, or maybe we get a different position, or we are taking a position in our neighborhood or our community. But in your notes, leadership is a responsibility to steward, to manage, to handle well. Some of you may have influence over 2 kids. Maybe some of you have influence over 20 students. Some of you might have influence over 200 employees. Some of you may have influence over 2,000 followers. See, whatever influence God has entrusted to you, he expects you to steward it well. So we're going to take a look at a man in the Old Testament. This is the first part of the Bible before Jesus comes on the scene, and his name was Nehemiah. And we're going to read an excerpt from the book with his name, Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1. It says, these are the memoirs of Nehemiah, son of Hacaliah. In late autumn, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes' reign, I was at the fortress of Susa. Hanani, one of my brothers, came to visit me with some other men who had just arrived from Judah. I asked them about the Jews who had returned there from captivity and how things were going in Jerusalem. So to set the stage, Nehemiah is living in Susa. Jerusalem, the Israelite nation, had been taken captive. This had been going on for decades now. Nehemiah lived there, but this was like his homeland. And so some people went back to the homeland to see how things were doing. Verse 3 says, they said to me, things are not going well for those who return to the province of Judah. They are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. When I heard this, I sat down and wept. In fact, for days I mourned and I fasted and I prayed to the God of heaven. See, Jerusalem, his homeland, was broken. The walls that would protect the city were broken down. They had been destroyed. The people who lived there were vulnerable. Now, Nehemiah could have easily said, well, you know what? That's not my problem. He's living in a place of comfort right now. He has a good occupation. He's living in a prosperous place. You could have easily said, that's not my problem. But he decided to take action. But here's the thing. In your notes, before you can lead others, you need to lead yourself. And see, that's the problem sometimes that we have in life, is that we're trying to lead other people, and yet we've not learned how to lead ourselves. What do we see the very first thing that Nehemiah does when he discovers this problem? It says that he mourned, he fasted, and he prayed. See, he was leading himself. He was guiding himself in his own actions and reactions. Now, Nehemiah didn't cause the problem, and yet he felt responsible for the solution. See, most people will just look at broken things and say, like whose fault is this? Who did that? Who can we blame? And yet leaders ask, what can I do about the problem? See, that's the difference. See, the difference is, in your notes, that followers find flaws, but leaders find solutions. We all know people in our life that can find the flaws in things, right? They're always picking apart the flaws, but a leader looks for the solution. How can we make this better? How can we improve the situation? See, anybody can criticize. Criticism is cheap. Anybody can complain about things that they have no control over. Anybody can point the fingers and blame someone else. But leadership begins when responsibility becomes personal. Leadership begins when you stop saying, somebody should do that, and start saying, what can I do? In Genesis 4, verse 9, we see a failure of leadership with the brothers of Cain and Abel. And Cain had killed his brother Abel. And it says, then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? He said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? See, he's not taking any ownership. He was not able to lead himself, and he was not able to lead others. See, this is one of the first leadership failures in Scripture. Because leadership begins when we stop asking, am I responsible? Who can I blame? And start asking, how can I help? How can I get involved? See, leaders take responsibility. Nehemiah, he wasn't a king. Nehemiah wasn't a governor. He wasn't a military commander. What he was a cupbearer. And what that meant was he was the guy that had the fortunate job of getting to taste the king's food and wine before the king would consume them. This would prevent any enemy attacks from poisoning the food. Nehemiah was like the first line of defense. A little bit of a risky job, perhaps, but it was a trusted job because he's around the king. He has a relationship with the king. He's the one that's tasting these things. And so here we see this cupbearer, and yet he became a leader because he cared enough to act. He could have just felt bad about the situation, sent his regards, maybe sent a small donation to them, but instead, he prayed up and then he stepped up. A great question to ask yourself is, what burden is God allowing you to see? What problem in life is God allowing you to see? Because in your notes, the things that break your heart reveal where God wants you to make a difference. It's often the thing that you find troubling or disturbing that God is calling you to make a difference. Maybe that's in your marriage. Maybe that's in your family. Maybe it's in your community. Maybe it has to do with an addiction that you faced or an addiction that others faced that possibly you recovered from. Maybe this thing that you see has to do with loneliness. Maybe it has to do with people who are far from God and don't know Jesus as their Savior. Maybe it's the next generation and wanting to make an impact in the youth of our world. In Ezekiel chapter 22, as another prophet from the Old Testament, he's speaking on behalf of God here. And he says, I look for someone who might rebuild the wall of righteousness that guards the land. I search for someone to stand in the gap. Underline that, stand in the gap. I search for someone to stand in the gap in the wall so I wouldn't have to destroy the land. But I found no one. See, God wasn't looking for a king. God wasn't looking for a celebrity. God wasn't looking for someone who had a large following on social media. He wasn't looking for the most talented person. In your notes, God is looking for someone willing to stand in the gap, to stand there, to bring protection, to bring guidance, to bring support, to give courage to others. See, leadership often starts when God lets you see something that other people would normally ignore and overlook. And instead of saying, well, somebody should do something. You know, we hear that a lot around church. People come and say, well, somebody should do something about this. Instead of asking that, maybe we begin saying, maybe God is asking me to do something. Maybe God is asking me to contribute my time, my energy, my resources to make a difference in this world. See, leaders take responsibility. Leadership is not just about ownership. See, leadership is about stewardship, stewarding the resources, the influence that God has given us. See, God entrusts influence to you for a season, and he expects us to manage it faithfully. See, your family is not yours. Your children are not yours. The gifts that you have, they're not yours. The opportunities that you get, it's not yours. The finances that you've accumulated, it's not yours. The influence that you have, it's not yours. See, all gifts that we have are entrusted to us by God. We are simply stewards. See, you don't own your influence. You steward it. And that's why leadership is so important. It's not about how much influence we have, but it's about what we do with the influence that God has trusted us with. See, leaders, they serve before they direct. See, there's this big misconception about leadership, and it's that leaders are the ones who are in charge. But see, Jesus completely flipped this idea upside down in Mark 10, verse 43. Jesus is speaking here, and he said, but among you, it'll be different. You know, you see people who lord their authority. They flex their power. They try to show off their accumulations in life. But among you, it'll be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your what? Servant. What does that mean? That means I got to serve. No. I want to be a leader so people can serve me. But Jesus is saying, if you want to be a leader, you must become a servant. And whoever wants to be the first among you must be the slave of everyone else. See, we want the role of being a leader, but most of us, we don't want to be the servant. We don't want to be the slave of everyone else. See, the world says that leadership is climbing the corporate ladder, climbing the ladder of success. And yet Jesus says leadership is about serving. The world says that leadership is about gaining more power. And yet Jesus says that leadership is about sacrificing for others. The world says that leadership is about getting people to do things for you so that you don't have to. And Jesus says leadership is doing things for other people. Think about it. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Messiah, the creator of the universe, and he washed people's feet. The creator of the universe served other people. And if Jesus led by serving others, why do we think that leadership is anything else? See, in your notes, leadership isn't how many people follow you, but how many people you help, how many lives you can impact for the kingdom of God. See, the best leaders are not those who are demanding. The best leaders are those who are dependable, the ones who show up, the leaders who care for other people, the leaders who sacrifice willingly, the leaders who serve, the leaders who are generous, and people trust them because they know that they're loved. See, and that's true in your family. That's true in your career. It's true in marriages. It's true in business. And it's true in church and in following God as well. See, great leaders don't ask, how can people serve me? They ask, how can I serve others? See, leaders, they shape the direction. But back to the boat analogy here. It's amazing how little movement it takes to change where you're headed. Right? It doesn't take a lot of movement, just a slight adjustment here and there. It's something that's barely noticeable, but over time, you end up in a completely different location because of the slight adjustments. And many of us, we're not even paying attention to where we're going in life. We've taken our hands off. We're just kind of going wherever the wind blows instead of where the Spirit leads us. In Proverbs 29, verse 18, it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Where there's no vision, the people perish. But he that keeps the law, happy is he. See, and life works the same way. See, big changes rarely happen because of one giant decision. It usually happens because of many, many small decisions that we make over the course of our life. Having a vision to move closer to God, to influence people around us. And these small decisions, a single prayer, a single apology to someone when it's deserved, a conversation that's needed to be had, an act of obedience, that moment of generosity, starting up that one habit, taking one step in the right direction. See, people don't tend to drift towards better. My boat, if I take my hands off, it doesn't drift towards better. I was out in the water and I decided to try it. I took my hands off, and within about 3 seconds, we were just like going into like this death spiral. Like I can't take my hands off of it. We don't drift towards better. We drift towards easier. But our direction determines our destination. And that's why leadership matters, because leaders shape the direction, not through perfection, not through more control, but through being intentional about following Christ, keeping our eyes fixed on Him. Maybe today you're looking at an area in your own life that's drifted. Maybe it's your marriage that's drifted. Maybe it's your faith that's drifted. Maybe your finances have drifted. Maybe your family has drifted. Maybe your relationship with God has drifted. And you might be tempted to blame the circumstances. Maybe you're tempted to blame somebody else. See, leadership starts when we stop asking, whose fault is this? And start asking, what can I do? What has God called me to do? See, Nehemiah, he couldn't fix everything, but he could take one step. And that step that he took ended up changing an entire nation. See, you don't have to solve every problem. You don't have to have every answer. You don't have to be perfect, because God knows that none of us are. You just have to be willing to take responsibility for what God has entrusted to you. Imagine standing before God. Imagine Him asking, what did you do with what I entrusted you with? What did you do with your influence? What did you do with your family? What did you do with the opportunities I gave you? What did you do with the gifts and abilities I gave you? What did you do with your financial resources I gave you? What did you do with your leadership? See, because leadership isn't about being famous. And it's not about being important. It's not about being in charge. It's about stewardship. Faithfully managing what God has placed in your hands. See, the boat, it naturally drifts. And it takes intention to keep it on course and to scan the horizon and to see the obstacles and to navigate around them. And the same is true for every area of our life. Somebody has to take the helm. Somebody has to take responsibility and decide where this life is headed. And maybe today God is reminding you that somebody is you. Maybe today God is reminding you that the direction of your life isn't determined by the wind, and it's not determined by the waves, and it's not even determined by the circumstances that you face in your life, but it's determined by your willingness to follow Him and steward what He's placed in your hands. So will you take the responsibility of what God has placed in your hands? You don't have to fix everything. You don't need all the answers. You don't need to be the smartest or the strongest or the most qualified. You simply have to say, God, I'll take the next step and I'll be faithful with the things that you've entrusted me with. Let's pray. Well, God, we come to you now, and we thank you for entrusting us with so much. You've given us influence. You've given us gifts and abilities. You've given us finances and skills. You've given us time, and you've given us these things to steward. Let us steward them well. Let us lead well. Let us lead ourselves well. Perhaps you're here today and your life is feeling like it's drifting farther and farther away from God, farther from the things that are important in life. Let me tell you, God is reaching out to you now, and He wants to save you. He wants to redeem you. He wants to forgive you, and he wants you in his family. If you believe that God loved you so much that he sent Jesus to die and he rose again to free us from the bondage of sin, if you believe that, won't you call on his name today and say, Jesus, you're my Lord, and I choose to follow you, and I want to steward the things that you've given me. God, we ask you, we invite you to use us. Let our lives be in shipshape. Let us be used by you, not for our own glory, not for our own honor, not for our own influence, but for you and for your kingdom, so that we can make a difference in this world with our one and only life. It's not for our glory, but it's for yours, because you are the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the greatest leader of all times, and we choose to praise you, honor you, and worship you now. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's stand together.